Ragnar Prime is all the hype at the moment for infantry mains, and today I'm going to be doing a Ragnar in-depth guide, going over Ragnar's skills, his talents, his pairings, how to unlock him, and finally if he's worth your investment. So if you're interested in Ragnar Prime as a commander, if he's going to be good for you and everything you need to know about him, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now, the first thing, as always with these in-depth guides that I should start off with, is Ragnar's skills. And we'll just start off with his active skill, and it's pretty simple. Ragnar is dealing AoE damage to 3 enemy troops in a fan-shaped area, damage factor of 2000. On top of this, the current target of this commander's troop, so Ragnar's current target, is going to take an additional 300 damage every second for the next 2 seconds. So they're going to take an extra 600 damage really. So in a 1v1 situation, you're looking at 2600 single target damage factor. Not too bad. Obviously not the most meta. We do have commanders such as William Wallace, for example, with higher possible single target damage. And there are even higher ones such as commanders when you look at them, for example, like Shajar. So it's a good active skill, especially the AoE, but in terms of 1v1, not going to be the most overpowered, but it is definitely strong. Moving on to Ragnar's second skill, he's just going to get 40% infantry defense. That's really, really good, and 10% march speed. The march speed, meh, we usually see more for infantry commanders, but it isn't a bad amount. 10% isn't too bad to have, it's better than nothing. Obviously, you'd expect more, but the defense is really solid. I don't think we've seen many major defensive commanders, besides maybe William Wallace has some defense. Actually, he does have defense. For some reason, I'm thinking there aren't many defense-heavy infantry commanders. That's mainly because, for example, CPO has no defense. Of course, Liu Che has no defense. So that is just a good stat to have on Ragnar. It's just something infantry don't have as much. William Wallace does have it, but he is kind of an exception. Him and Ragnar are kind of the only two. And I think William Wallace's defense is a trigger thing. So it's not going to be a constant running thing. Ragnar is just getting a 40% defense bonus, which is really good. It's going to synergize a lot with Liu Che and also CPO. On top of this, whenever he's using only normal troops, or infantry troops, he is going to get a 10% normal damage reduction. Really good against smite commanders, and there's not much to complain about there. Moving on to his third skill, if this commander is in a field troop, so when he's on the open field, that means he can't be in a garrison or resource node. Whenever he launches or is hit with a basic attack, he has a 10% chance to drain the enemy's attack by 20% and march speed by 30% for 2 seconds. So what this means, when it says drain, he's pretty much going to leech stats off them. So whoever he hits, let's say they have, or whatever number of stats they have, he's going to remove that number, so like a debuff. So he'll debuff 20% attack and he'll debuff 30% march speed, and he's going to give himself those stats. So he's going to give himself 20% attack and 20% march speed from the enemy's stats. Keep in mind, once this is going, it will probably keep itself running. He's got a 10% chance or a 30% chance when maxed to trigger this, so it's going to keep itself up most of the time. So the second you get this to trigger once, you can usually just keep it going and going, which will keep Ragnar's stats at a pretty beefy level. This is not the most amazing, the drain, like it's not game breaking, but in terms of the march speed drain, it is very nice. It's a passive skill, which means it will stack with active skill march speed debuffs, such as commanders like, let's say, Shajar and Boudica Prime, who do have march speed reductions in their active skill, and it's also going to make Ragnar much faster when he's hitting an enemy or being attacked. So whenever he's being attacked or hitting an enemy, he is going to be able to pretty much chase people down or get away a little bit easier. The reason I'm not a big fan of the drain for when you're being attacked is the attack is obviously useless in that situation. Gaining attack when you're being swarmed isn't going to help you too much. It'll be okay, but it wouldn't be too crazy. But gaining march speed when you're being hit and only when you're being hit means that it's going to be a constant, like, you get a bit forward and then you get attacked. And you go forward and then you get attacked, and it's not going to work too much in your favor. But when you're chasing people down, it is really good. It's going to be quite strong, and it should allow you to chase down a lot of enemy marchers and really hammer them. So anyone that tries to escape a murder ball, Ragnar is a really good choice for a commander to just gun straight for them. Moving on to his fourth skill, this commander's troop just takes 25% less skill damage if they're on the open field, which is nice. So again, no resource nodes and no garrisons. And every time his rage reaches 70%, he's going to gain a 15% bonus to skill damage dealt for 4 seconds, which just means he's going to deal more skill damage. So that is nice. His active skill, unless he gets silenced or gets rage reduction by like a Belisarius Prime, should just chuck off a 15% skill damage bonus, which is very good. So that's going to help him and his secondary commander just deal more damage. Moving on to Ragnar's expertise though, this commander is going to deal direct damage. It's an increase of his active skill, so he's going to change it up. He's going to deal direct damage still to 3 enemy troops in a fan-shaped area. The damage factor will be 2,200. And the only other change is that all troops hit by this active skill will take additional damage. So instead of just the one target, like when it was just a normal skill, so Raven's Call, it's going to be every single troop you're hitting. So if Ragnar hits 3 enemy troops with this skill, they're all going to take that 300 extra damage, which pretty much gives him a 2,800 damage AoE, which is really good. Now, that is much, much better than the initial active skill, which was pretty meh. This one is a very, very, very powerful active skill. It is actually stronger than a 2,800 AoE because this additional damage is not going to be reduced by a damage reduction here. So you can see when you get normal AoE, every additional target will reduce the damage to each target by 15%. Ragnar is not going to be getting that reduction on the second part of his skill. The 2,200 damage will still get reduced, but that extra 600 is not going to be reduced, which will be nice. Unless it is reduced, but it doesn't say it is here, and to my knowledge, it isn't reduced, because there are commanders like Cyrus who do something similar, and theirs isn't reduced. So there's a very good chance Ragnar does not get a reduction on his skill there, which means you're going to deal literally 600 damage, and you can't really change that. So that is very nice, and definitely it is quite powerful. Keep in mind though, it's going to be additional damage, so that means it's not going to be boosted in the same way as normal skill damage. It's going to require stuff such as additional damage bonuses, which is something that Cyrus does, for example, where he increases the additional damage taken. It also does mean that when it comes down to skills and talents, I'll get into them a little bit later, latent power is going to be pretty strong. So now that we've gone over Ragnar's skills fully in depth and explained all his little niches and the small parts of his kit that you may have missed, let's go over what he needs to be a good open field commander. And I think Ragnar, he's a bit lackluster unless you get him to that expertise, because the damage factor he's going to gain is just ridiculous, to the point where I think it is worth it. You're giving yourself an extra, it's like 600 on the normal AoE, and then an extra 1,200. It's like an extra 2,000-ish damage factor in total. So it's a really, really good expertise to get. 2,000 is a bit of an exaggeration, but nevertheless, it is still a really good expertise. So I think it's worth getting. Not to mention, all of Ragnar's skills are pretty good. His weakest is probably his 4th skill, so bare minimum, I'd get him to 5, 5, 5, 1. But it is worth getting that expertise. This 4th skill is still really good. It's not that bad. And the expertise is pretty damn good, especially with the amount of AoE damage you're going to get. So Ragnar, I'd say you should expertise him. I don't see a reason to skip the expertise on his kit. He doesn't really have any skills that would make me say, yeah, you can skip this. They're all pretty good for his kit. The 4th one is still really strong, even though it is his weakest. It's a 40% skill damage bonus, which is amazing. And then the rest of his kit is still pretty good. So expertise, I'd say, is worth it. But if you want to just start running him at the bare minimum, 5, 5, 5, 1 is a good place to begin. Now, in terms of talents for Ragnar, let me quickly switch over to a place where I can show you his best talent build. The best talent build for Ragnar, it's pretty much going to look exactly like this. Ragnar benefits a lot from everything in the skill tree, and when I talk about his pairings, you will really see why. Also, we are picking up latent power here because it is going to enhance his additional damage, which is that damage is going to be dealing in an extra addition to his normal active skill. So you're going to have that infantry active skill with the normal damage factor, and you're going to get that additional damage you deal to all the targets. That 300 per second for 2 seconds, latent power will be boosting it. So you should be picking up latent power at like a bare minimum for the skill tree. And then we've just gone full in for Feral Nature. I'm a really big fan of it. I've always said I'm a big fan of Feral Nature with the way that it plays out on the open field, because it is going to allow you to really get your active skill up and running before your opponents can. Or in a small situation where you're fighting and running back and forth like a normal open field fight, it is again going to be very beneficial there, because you're going to be able to get your active skills off and deal the damage that you need on the open field. So Feral Nature, almost essential in my opinion, in terms of the damage it's going to be dealing for you, and it's pretty much the ease of use it's going to give you on the open field. It's going to make Ragnar much easier to use, especially because there are no real good rage generating infantry commanders. You pretty much need Feral Nature to have that as an option. On top of that, we're getting Naked Rage because, again, when we look at his pairings, they're all relatively tanky and they're going to be loaded with lots of AoE. So Naked Rage is worth it for Ragnar, in my opinion. Other than that, in terms of the infantry stats, we've gone and gotten as much march speed as we can. This is like, in total, I think 18% march speed, which is nice. We've picked up a bit of extra infantry health because Ragnar doesn't have too much. And then the other stats here, they're not the most amazing, so you might as well go grab Strong of Body. We've got Core of the Pack, which means you're going to get a bit of defense when you lose a bit of strength. That's not the most amazing talent, but it's kind of a required one. And you've got some damage to calves, and you've also got a bit more rage gain. So this, in my opinion, would be Ragnar's best build. If you wanted an infantry tree build, you'd have to look at something else. But in my opinion, he really needs Feral Nature. And just for most commanders, besides commanders like YSG, who generate a lot of rage, I generally recommend Feral Nature just because it is such a good talent to run in short, bursty, open field fights. Now, in terms of Ragnar's best pairings, there isn't too much information on this right now because he came out, I think, maybe 3-4 days ago. But that does mean there's a bit of speculation. But to my knowledge, this is going to be his best pairings. If I'm wrong, let me know. His best pairing from what I've seen is Scipio Africanus. It is a good pairing. It is not absolutely game-breaking though. Scipio, he's really strong still. He's got amazing AoE and great debuffs. And I think Ragnar is a very solid pairing with him. It's got very good AoE, it's got very good damage, and it's got decent march speed. The march is really good overall, but it's just not an outstanding crazy march. From the 1v1 duels I've seen, and again, those are 1v1, so it's different on the open field, but from the duels I've seen, Ragnar with Scipio, or Scipio as a primary, Ragnar as a secondary, was generally losing quite often to William Wallace with Liu Che. And that is obviously to be expected. These are two AoE commanders, and I think that is a very valid point. But they were winning as well against commanders like Zhulang and Herman, which are double AoE marches. So it does kind of tell you that Ragnar and Scipio, it's a bit more tanky, it's got a bit more damage output, it's going to be a really good double AoE march. So even though it is technically losing to William Wallace and Liu Che, that is one of the top dual marches in the game. You would expect it to pretty much be losing. So in those situations, I think it is acceptable. But in terms of open field strength, I don't see anything being close to the power of Ragnar with Scipio for infantry and AoE. The AoE you're going to get out of it is really good. I just don't see it being a bad option. The other thing that people have questioned is Liu Che with Ragnar. I don't really like it because Ragnar's got a lot of skill damage and skill damage reliance in his kit, and Liu Che just doesn't. They don't really synergize too well. We're still looking at keeping Liu Che with his current pairings, commanders such as William Wallace. So Ragnar, I think, is pretty much best with Scipio Africanus, and is just an okay upgrade over Guan. So that is what I would say mostly about Ragnar. Seems to be a Scipio Africanus pairing. I've seen some okay stuff with Ragnar Tarek, but that's a really niche pairing. If you want to run it, you can do it, but it's just not the most meta. And Ragnar Sargon, again, I've seen decent stuff, just not the most meta. Ragnar with Guan, I haven't seen too much on it. I don't think it's too amazing though, just because Ragnar isn't the most tanky. He's not squishy by any means, but he's just not the most tanky commander, especially the only thing he has is really that defense and normal damage reduction. So Ragnar, not super tanky. Scipio is still tankier, and Scipio does synergize a little bit more with Guan. But that being said, it is an okay march nonetheless. You can run it, you might get away with it, but in my opinion, it's not the best. The silence with Ragnar doesn't really do much for him besides it just being a normal silence debuff. Scipio, on the other hand, really benefits from the silence because he's going to get rage, and it's just going to be better for his kit. So I don't see why you would run Guan with Ragnar, especially because if you have Guan, you most likely have Scipio, and you can just run Scipio Ragnar. So there would be pretty much no point in running that. In my opinion, you're probably looking at Scipio as the primary, even though I showed you Ragnar's talents, just because the health reduction is going to be really good, and it's going to make him really deal more damage. It's going to let Ragnar's skill deal more damage. It wouldn't really make sense to run Scipio as a secondary. So Scipio primary, Ragnar secondary generally seems like the best pairing. You can try Ragnar primary if you want to get his AoE off faster, because he does have a higher AoE, and it's going to technically deal more damage. So if you find you're struggling to get both active skills off, just run Ragnar primary, test that out. But in my opinion, I think that Scipio Africanus will be a better primary overall just because of the health debuff, and it's just going to allow you, your main march, Ragnar and Scipio, and also your other marches to deal more damage in most situations. In terms of obtaining Ragnar, currently the only way I know of is the event that's ongoing right now. I think this is Season of Conquest only, and it's just pretty simple. Log in, go in and grab your free Ragnar here. I already claimed it, so you claim it, you get him for free, you don't have to spend any money, and then you just keep logging in, and at day 10, you will receive another Ragnar, or another 10 sculptures, so you can get him to like 2111 for free. You can also purchase him at different levels here. I'm obviously not going to buy him because I'm not investing in him, but each time you purchase Ragnar, you're going to get another 10 sculptures. At least that's what it looks like. So let me just click here. I'm pretty sure this is just going to be 10 Ragnar sculptures. Well, I can't buy it yet, but it looks like it'll be 10 Ragnar sculptures. just because that is one full commander, and generally that is 10 sculptures. So Ragnar, looking like it's going to be 10 sculptures per day at the moment. So in total, you can get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You can get 60 sculptures if you spend. It's a hefty amount of money. In my opinion, if you want to get Ragnar, you can get the first tier for free. This second tier is worth it. This third tier is maybe worth it. And then I wouldn't buy day 7 or day 9. They're not the highest value. Day 10 is obviously free, but 7 and 9, not the best value. The rest of them, though, are pretty good. Also, side note, the rewards here are decent. The 90 hours of speed ups is nice. I don't know if you have to purchase, though, to unlock the next day. So if you don't have to purchase anything, they're good. If you have to spend money, it's not the best. But if you don't, I mean, you might as well get them for free. So depending, if you have to spend here to get to the other tiers, not the best. If you don't, though, then that is definitely nice. Just checked, you do have to purchase the previous levels. So when it comes for Ragnar, I just buy these first 2 levels. They're the only 2 that make sense. Anything beyond that is not the most value. You can consider day 4 if you want to spend a bit more money, but only this first 2 levels would be the higher value stuff in my opinion. Also, as a side note, if you do use 200 generic sculptures on Ragnar, you will get all these rewards as well. So if you're looking to invest in him, I think now is a better time to do it just because you'll get extra stuff. So instead of waiting for KVK, you can maybe consider doing it now. If you know you have a KVK really soon, the speed ups here are actually pretty solid. So if you're willing to take a bit of a risk, you're going to get maybe, it looks like 150, 200-ish, 300-ish hours of speed up. So it is nice. If you want to invest in him a bit early, just free stuff for investing in Commander, something we haven't really seen before. So if you want to invest in him, now's not a bad time, and it would be slightly worth it. Speaking of investing, what do I think about Ragnar as a current investment? In my opinion, he's okay. I mean, he doesn't look meta-breaking from the tests I've seen, and just reading his skills, he's not the most insane. He's just good. He's a good Guan replacement. He really is just a way to extend the life of your CPO, maybe by 1.5 to 2 years, and then you'll have to get a new pairing for your Ragnar if Lilith continues to release some form of a skill damage commander for infantry. I think this does suggest we will still see some skill damage infantry commanders, but he's just not that overpowered for me to say, yeah, put your gold heads in him. There are new calves coming very soon who will most likely be overpowered purely because we are expecting that the new calves are good since the current calves are very, very mid. So when it comes down to the next calves, they're probably going to be amazing. I definitely want to keep an eye out for them before I say go ahead and invest in Ragnar. And he's just not the most amazing. I mean, you can still run Legal Chair with William Wallace and it's a better march. You can still run Guan with CPO and it's going to trade similar. It's not going to be as good to be expected. Guan is like 3-4 years old now. Ragnar literally came out like 2 days ago. So when it comes down to it, Ragnar is a decent-ish investment, but he's not going to be the best choice. There are better commanders most likely coming soon. There are better commanders in the game now. So just as a general heads up, if you don't have CPO and you don't have, so if you don't have Leo Chair, I wouldn't invest in him. If you don't have CPO, I also wouldn't invest in him. It wouldn't make sense. And if you don't have even maybe William Wallace, I probably wouldn't get Ragnar. So unless your CPO or your Leo Chair, unless your Leo Chair has got a really good pairing, I would be skipping on that Ragnar investment. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, if you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more content on the new infantry commanders, new siege, new cavalry when we do get them, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It's a very small thing, it really does help, and it just helps grow my channel, gets the videos out there, and I definitely appreciate it a lot. So if you want to see more of these videos and you want to see more in-depth information, definitely, please do consider subscribing. Really helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. Other than that, I just want to say I thank you all for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.